Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of TC Talk, back today with another video. And in today's video, I'm going to be giving you some learnings I've had over a good amount of games on the new Edge of Autumn list. Kind of talk about just through some things to hopefully help you as well if you're a little bit stuck on maybe some things to try out, and just kind of give you some, I guess, general level tips I've had over just purposefully making mistakes in games and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. So hopefully it helps you out. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hopefully you enjoy your stay. If you're a long-standing supporter, thank you so much as always. Feel free to check out the Discord down below as well as the channel membership. Just to show you, this is my list. I keep this list separate from the public list just so I can track like what I'm doing. Over 52 games, 67%, which the win rate means absolutely nothing. It's literally just to show you the amount of games that I've played. And as you can see, these are the type of heroes I've been playing against. A lot of Ira mirrors, obviously, because people are trying out the new hero. Makes complete sense. A lot of Katsu games, because people were trying out Edge of Autumn Katsu. A lot of games against Tough Nut, poor Tough Nut. And then some other... Luckily, I got some people to match up to me, like Verdance, which was really nice. A couple Syndras, stuff like that. So overall, pretty good. Verdance is still really rough. We'll talk about matchups on a different video. That matchup is so close. Every game that I lost, I was like one turn too slow. They all comboed me, obviously, but I was one turn too slow. So I'm going to try to find a way to make that matchup a little bit faster. But this is where I'm at. I've had like a lot of games in the last, like, it came out, what, 2 nights ago at 11 p.m. And I played most of the night that night and then played a lot yesterday and a lot this morning. So I've been trying to put in as many games as I possibly can. But regardless, I'm going to kind of talk about some different learnings that I've had. I'm going to pull up my notes so I don't make sure I don't miss anything. It's like 5 journal notes. The first one, and the one we kind of talked about on the channel already, is Iris of the Blossom. This card is awesome. There's a couple different layers of why I think this is actually probably the main headpiece in Ira, and this is just my opinion. If you choose to run Mask Momentum, it's completely fine. Like, it's not a bad pick by any means. It's not like Iris is hands down better in terms of power level or anything like that. But we've already talked about the hand fixing at nauseum, right? And how it can go get Whirly Mist Blossom. It can really fix your hands, give you a better threat. And when you combine that with attack reactions like Ikaru and Ancestral, Nip at the Heels, stuff like that, it can just make your hand a lot more threatening when you normally would have kind of a dud hand. And that's always been Ira's issue. The other thing I've kind of noticed, and is because I played Mask Momentum for a couple games, is Mass Threat. It's not as impactful for 2 reasons. One, just the general play lines. Going 3 wide is pretty consistent in the deck. However, I don't know how to explain it. It's more of like more modal than it used to be. It's not definitely like the Kadachi attack. Like, every single hand structure is very different. It's a lot less death and taxes as old Ira was. So because of that, like, Mask Momentum doesn't get that consistent value. Now, could you set your list up to do that? Possibly. But it just doesn't get as much. The other thing is, because the way Ira works now, at least with the couple games I've played so far, you're a lot more threatening than you used to be. Mainly, Ira's like, the Ira that's been played up to this point, the only threat was like if you cared about Mass Momentum, which we've already gone over on the channel on why most decks actually don't care about Mass Momentum anymore, or at least care a little. Is your Mask Momentum trigger or Command and Conquer, or if you're playing a certain tech matchup, sometimes like an Erase Phase or something like that, right? Or a Humble would really, people would care about. Censor people even don't always care about. They're just going to make you try to guess the right card, so on and so forth. So your on hits weren't as impactful as they used to be. It usually was Command and Conquer and then like 2 play sets of tech on hits. With this list, the on hits are a lot more rampant. You have cards like Whirly Mist Blossom, obviously. You have cards like Enact Vengeance, which is like another playset of Command and Conquer. You still have your normal disruption with Command and Conquer, and then your sideboarding and like Erase Face and Humbles. You have other on hits like Vengeance Never Rest, which can threaten coming back again and hitting someone for 3. And then if you banish Edge of Autumn and then play Edge of Autumn and then play it again, then all of a sudden it's doing the same thing again. You have other your general like on hits in terms of every time you hit, you're turning on Iris for the first time that turn to be able to go get Whirly Mist Blossom, Like, there's just a lot more threats in the deck in terms of like offensive potency. So you don't need to. Before Ira, at least the old way of thinking, like even before the most recent list, Ira's the main reason we're running Mask Momentum is to try to force some level of on hit and don't just be a generic damage deck and actually make your opponent interact with you. Your opponents can interact with you regardless now with the Edge of Autumn list. Like, they just kind of have to. If they don't, you're going to kind of run over them because you can draw a bunch of cards in a turn. I've really had turns where my opponent just decided they didn't want to block me that turn, and I drew 4 cards because I would play like a Whirling Mist Blossom for 4, and they would try to block it exact. I would Ikaru it, draw from 2 from Whirling Mist Blossom, and then play another attack and draw for something else. It was just ridiculous. So there's a lot of things you can do, and I think it might lend Iris to be the main headpiece because of that. And you can go even more in depth. I could do a 10-minute video or 20-minute video just on Iris. Is that to say you can't run Mask Momentum? No, it's not to say that, but it's more. There's more reasons to run Iris in the current, at least my current first impressions. That's where I have it. The next thing also, and I wanted to bring this up, is like with all these attack reactions, and we kind of just went over like with Legacy of Ikaru, Ancestral Empowerment, Nip of the Heels, you're also going, the deck is kind of changed, and this kind of coincides with point 1, is like the deck is like plays almost like, not an assassin, but a sort of like an assassin, where like before your opponent just kind of had to block, unless they knew you ran razors, they could just exact block your attacks. And you were kind of relying on that +1 value from Ira to make the blocks harder. Whereas now, like if I present an opponent Whirling Mist Blossom with 2 cards in hand on Chain Link 2 after they let Edge of Autumn hit, and now Whirling Mist Blossom's coming in for 3, if you truly want to, even if they're not running razors and you know they're not running razors, if you want to respect Whirling Mist Blossom, you essentially have to block 5, maybe 6. Probably about 5 is the safe number, which is really nuts, right? And if you want to respect Razor, which most people aren't going to go that high and respect Razor that much, but like if you want to respect a Whirling Mist Blossom into a Ikaru play, you have to block for 5, and it's just creating a lot more offensive potency in the deck, and it creates, it lends more to Iris being more viable than Mask Momentum for a bunch of different reasons. The next thing is Vengeance Never Rests. I just wanted to shout out this card. This is the best card in the deck. This card, as far as a consistency standpoint, being able to swing this as a 1-for-4 go again on hit, it's a 2-for-7, is really, really good. It helps make up for the value that you lose from the not having 2 Kodachis and having that consistent 1-2. When you combine Vengeance Never Rest, you combine forcing more blocks from your opponent, and you also add in like cards like Seek Vengeance and like these really high level attacks. It kind of makes up for the value that you were losing, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Vengeance Never Rests is an amazing card. It's one of the best cards in the deck, period. When you combine this card with Prismatic Leyline, you play Prismatic first, then you play Edge of Autumn. I'm noticing, at least early on, this blocking pattern may change, but a lot of opponents are blocking Edge because they think I'm coming in with a Whirling Mist Blossom, and I may be trying to at some point in the turn, but they block Edge so Whirling Mist Blossom isn't turned on. And then you Vengeance Never Rest for 7 because it gets +1 from Ira and +3 from Prismatic Leyline. And then they don't want to block that. So now you hits, you banish Vengeance Never Rest. You can play it again this turn. If you know they're definitely not going to block depending on the deck and you think you're safe enough to activate Arms, you can get Edge of Autumn back and be able to swing with it again that turn. Then you play Whirling Mist Blossom. Even if you don't have it in hand, you activate Iris. And then you play Whirling Mist Blossom for 4. Threatening to draw 2, and you still have Vengeance Never Rest coming back. The card's just, it does some really dumb stuff when you add in Prismatic Leyline, and it's probably my favorite card in the deck, to be completely honest. The other one on the more negative side is Bittering Thorns Blue. I wanted to try this, like it's new in the Armory deck. I thought it was really cool. It just doesn't quite threaten enough. You can play it Chain Link 1, but then most of the time, just because of the way play lines work, you're wanting to play Edge of Autumn, so it gives you that +1 if it hits, and I guess it could force a block out early potentially, but it's a 1-card block. It just doesn't, because it doesn't ever hit a breakpoint even off Ira, it's not as good. It is pretty decent with Prismatic Leyline because it gets up to 6 on Prismatic Leyline turns on Chain Link 2, so that can kind of bode well for you depending on how things are working out. But overall, it just didn't perform enough for me. Maybe I'll go back to it and try it, but right now it's not my thing. And this one, again, we've talked about this before a little bit on the channel, but I could make a whole video on just the arms. The sum up the arms is don't get greedy with the arms, please God. If you banish Edge of Autumn and it does not hit, then you are in trouble. Like the deck functionally just crumbles. The only hope you have is that you have some crazy 5-card Bittering Thorns turn where I've had turns because like I've purposely banished my Edge of Autumn knowing it wasn't going to hit just to see like how bad the deck felt into certain matchups. I did it into an aggro matchup. I did into Syndra. I did it into a mid-range matchup like Tough Nut. And I did it into a slower matchup like Verdance. I did it on purpose just to see like how horrible it was. Verdance was an auto loss, obviously. I just wanted to see how bad. Tough Nut, I got it back like 20 turns later after we had been going back and forth. We both were down to single-digit cards. And Tough Nut just couldn't. I had like a double Bittering Thorns turn where they obviously at Intellect 3, like the only reason I got it's probably because they're Intellect 3. And then Syndra, I got it back like 3 turns later, but I had to take some damage to do it. It's just bad. Like, there are certain matchups where you can do it safely, right? Like, you know, certain matchups aren't going to run defense reactions. There's very little in the game right now that don't run defense reactions. In certain matchups like Syndra, or I guess like the most safest one is like Mechanologist, right? Like if you're playing a Dash IO, or at least Mechanologist in terms of like relevant ones, you're playing like a Dash IO, you know, if they block exact or they like block 3 out of 5 or something, you're more safe to banish the arms. But if you're running into an Ira or even a Gravy Bones that has some defense reactions, if you're running into even a Syndra, I would be careful because sometimes they might side in like shelters on top of their loyalty Beyond the Graves and be able to stuff you. Like that +1 value, the only time you should really risk that, in my opinion, into a mid-range matchup or worse, like a fatigue matchup, is if it's late game and you're really trying to force blocks, or if you're on a prismatic leyline turn into Vengeance Never Rests with an attack react because you know it's going to come in for 9. So if they say no blocks, unless they have 3 defense reactions in hand, you're pretty safe for it to hit. But just be okay with this as being a 2-block. Like, it's fine. It doesn't have to always get this crazy value. It will get good value in some games. There's been some games where I've activated this thing like 4 times because I knew whether it was in their grave. I knew they probably, there was very, very high chance they did not have a defense reaction, and I was able to just recur value that way, right? But most of the time, this is fine at just a block 2, which is really good. I mean, on Ira right now, if you're running Iris, once you activate Iris, basically twice you can block with it because the third time, like, you'll get to whirling eventually, the third one. So you if you're running Breeze Rider Boots, you have access to 5 block, which is really, really good. Like 5 proactive block, which is really nice. So you don't always have to use the arms. Just get a feel for it. I would actually encourage people in Talishar, like, don't care about your win rate. When you play into certain matchups like a Syndra or like, you know, a matchup that's not like obvious of they have a bunch of defense reactions, go ahead and use it pretty frivolously. See if you get stuffed one time and then see how bad it feels. Once you do that once or twice, you'll understand like when and when not to use it. Edge of Autumn is really important, obviously, for the arms, and that was kind of where I was going with that. The next one, as I'm looking through here, is you have some of the same mid-range power as old Ira, and I was actually surprised on this. I thought you were going to lose a little bit of value from having Edge of Autumn and cards like Seek Vengeance and stuff, and not the 2 Kodachis. But I thought you would be more offensively like threatening, so that was kind of the trade-off. I really think you have almost as equal of a grind fest as you did with the old Ira. Like, I had 2 games today. One against, I mean, they were against weird opponents, but they were against fatigue-based opponents. Tekla Boston, who was playing like a super fatigue late game singularity list, and a Lyeth gold main, which was running like Steadfast and Rampart and all this other stuff. The Lyeth, I ended up threatening 220 damage before killing them with like 3 cards in the deck. It was ridiculous. I got lucky off a nip of the heels when they were at 1 life and I edged and then played nip, and I guess they weren't tracking my pitch because Talishar people don't do as much. And I ended up getting them for 1 damage, which was pretty hilarious. Then I played against the Tekla Boston that I got 190 damage before killing them. I was basically going to fatigue them. They had Singularity and Arsenal, and I knew they did, so I had to kind of keep the foot on the gas. But regardless, you can still grind out opponents. Where it does hurt is if you end up running into a Rampart hero or a hero that can basically nullify your Edge of Autumn without expending any cards in deck, that can really hurt, and that will be an issue over like Kodachi, because against Rampart, if they Rampart the first Kodachi, you can Kodachi for 2, right? And then they actually have to give up a card before you've even given up a card to prevent damage. So that's a way you can grind it out. So there are certain matchups where the Kodachis definitely are better. I don't think it's enough to switch board personally. I don't think those matchups are going to be relevant enough in the meta. But you still can very much grind opponents out. Cards like Enact Vengeance, cards like Seek Vengeance are very, very good. It allows you to have that same mid-range capability while also being more offensively potent with cards like Whirling Mist Blossom. So that's kind of where my initial thoughts are. I think the deck's in a pretty cool spot. Is it better than old Ira? I really don't know yet. It plays completely different. Like, I'm having to relearn how to play against heroes because my deck plays so much different than it used to. It used to really be in a lot of matchups like block with 2 or 3 cards and send 8, right? And it was just like Death and Taxes style until you found an opening with like dual threat. That was like the biggest thing. And I think for me right now is figuring out like, okay, what's my general play pattern 8 out of 10 turns with Ira, and then what is my pop-off turn? What am I looking to do? And right now I'm trying to like Arsenal Prismatic Leyline and have a red and a blue attack in hand, and then use Iris to go get Whirling and have this really good turn to get +6 value. That's what I'm trying to do right now. But we have to figure that out, right? Because dual threat was kind of our biggest like tempo swing. So we got to figure out what that tempo swing is now. But the deck does play like a ninja. It has a bunch of different play lines, a bunch of different ways of going about doing things, whereas before it was kind of like Death and Taxes, right? So that's where I'm at. Hopefully y'all are enjoying the list. I'll keep updating it as I update my own. I'm gonna try to make a list. My first iteration was like I want to make a ninja list that cares about Whirling Mist Blossom and cares about like tricking the opponent with attack reactions. Like that's the kind of Ira I wanted to play because I thought it was really cool. So it might change over time, but that's kind of where my macro level thought process was, at least initially. So hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe. If not me, it's completely fine. Go to another creator, do it down below. I have a bunch of creators down the career worksheet in the description. Let me know what you've been enjoying about the list. If you've been playing my list, let me know what cards have underperformed for you. I'd like to get other people's opinions on it and try to make the list better. Especially if you put in some good games on the list, that would be really appreciated. Just let me know like what you seem like you're struggling, what you feel like you're missing, and maybe we can make the list better together. So hopefully enjoy this. Thank y'all so much. Stay safe, and I'll see y'all next time.